Welcome! Chapter 2 focuses on conflicting functions in education. Pay attention to the title. Note that it has the terms conflict and function in it, just like the theories we studied in Chapter 1, conflict theory and functionalism. This is not by accident. Chapter 2 kind of pulls these two theories together a bit and says, yes, there are particular functions in education and kind of an idea of a place for everything and everything in its place. But not everyone agrees on which of those functions are most important, and for certain types of functions, which values are most important, thus the conflict in the system. Chapter 2 also talks about the concept of structure, and you have to think in kind of a different way about structure than you may be used to. When we talk about structures in education, we're not talking specifically about physical structures like buildings and classrooms and gymnasiums and playgrounds. Instead, think about structure like you might think about the structure of your family. You might have a mom and a dad, or maybe just one or the other, or maybe you were raised by an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent. Regardless, there was someone in charge when you were growing up. And maybe you had brothers or sisters, and you had to learn that sometimes the rules of the family worked in your favor, and sometimes they worked in your brother's or your sister's favor. Maybe you had a dog or a cat that you had to learn to take care of, or when you were a teenager, you had a car you had to learn to take care of. All of these people and things were part of the structure of your family. The rules, expectations, and processes that made your family function. Or not, sometimes. Schools have similar types of roles of people, from administrators to teachers to parents to students, and they have similar types of rules, responsibilities, expectations of the people in certain roles, and so on. That's the structure of schooling. One important thing to keep in mind about the structure of schools is that sometimes it works in your favor, and sometimes it doesn't, just like growing up in your family. Now, within that structure of schooling, there are different functions or processes that make education operate the way it does. Ballantyne and Hammock describe 5 particular functions in Chapter 2, and as you'll see, all of these are interrelated to a certain extent. And, as you'll also see, these are some fascinating concepts with some great examples to read throughout Chapter 2. First, they look at socialization, which is the process by which children are taught about the expectations that are placed on them and how to meet those expectations. Function 2 is the transmission of culture, and here we're talking about the curriculum. What is it that is being taught and why? And you'll get to cover some examples like censorship in schools. In other words, what is not being taught and why. Function 3 is social control, and here you'll read about discipline in schools, school violence, and so on. In other words, what are the processes that are used to keep kids in line, even if those processes may come from other kids at times. Fourth, Chapter 2 looks at training and the placement of individuals in society. So here we're talking about how schools prepare students for the world of work, including things like standardized tests and aptitude tests and sorting of students into things like college prep courses versus vocational courses. Fifth and finally, Chapter 2 looks at change and resistance to change. Specifically, this 5th section looks at technology and how it is altering schooling, sometimes for the better, sometimes not. And the fact that you are all taking this course online is one prime example of how schooling has changed dramatically just in the last 5 to 10 years. Some people are comfortable with that kind of change, others not so much. So that's the outline of Chapter 2. Like I said, there are some really keen, interesting examples to read throughout the chapter, so don't just stop after you read the introductory stuff in the first few pages. Keep moving on. We've got a standard unit again, a quiz and a discussion forum, so make sure you do both, and I'll see you online.